Stop wasting your time on outdated language learning methods that promise results but leave you stuck at square one. We've all been there, grinding through apps, memorizing endless grammar rules, and still struggling to string together a simple sentence. What if I told you there's a better, faster way to learn a new language that cuts through all the fluff? It's called Pragmatism, and it's about getting results by focusing on what actually works, not what's supposed to work. In this video, we're going to throw out the traditional rules and show you how to leverage practical, real-world strategies that will get you speaking with confidence, faster than you ever thought possible. Ready to break free from the language learning grind and start making real progress. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might just change the way you think about learning forever. Let's dive in. Number 1. Throw away the grammar book. Learn through real conversations. You know what they say. The best way to learn a language is by speaking it. But what if I told you that grammar books are actually holding you back? Yes, you heard me right. Throw away that grammar book. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait, how can I learn without understanding the rules? Let me assure you, this might be the most liberating piece of advice you've ever gotten. We've all been there, haven't we? Staring at pages filled with conjugations, trying to memorize endless verb tenses, and still feeling like we're not getting any closer to fluency. We spend hours mastering the theory, but when we're in a real conversation, we freeze. It's like the words just won't come out, and that grammar chart you studied yesterday suddenly doesn't seem to help. Sounds familiar, right? It's frustrating, and honestly, it makes us question whether we'll ever get this whole language thing right. Now, here's the twist. Forget about grammar rules for a second. Yes, I'm serious. Instead, dive straight into real conversations. Start talking to people in your target language, even if you only know a handful of words. The more you speak, the more your brain picks up patterns and structures naturally. No, you're not going to sound perfect at first, but you will learn faster than you ever will by just studying grammar. Trust me on this. The key to learning a language is not through memorizing rules, but through using it. You'll pick up the language much more effectively by engaging with it in real contexts, where you're forced to think on your feet. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I was in a small cafe in Barcelona, desperately trying to order a coffee in Spanish. I'd spent weeks learning vocabulary and memorizing basic phrases, but when I stood in front of the barista, I completely blanked. There I was, all flustered, trying to remember which verb tense to use when the barista just smiled and switched to English. In that moment, I realized, this isn't how language works. It's about connection, not perfection. From that day on, I started using my language skills in the real world, chatting with waiters, asking for directions, or even just talking to fellow travelers. It was messy, but it worked. I made mistakes, but I learned way faster than when I was sitting in my room memorizing grammar charts. Here's the thing. Learning through conversation isn't just about learning words. It's about learning how to think in the language. It's about pushing yourself into situations where you have no choice but to use what you know and let your brain adjust. And the beauty of this approach? You start to develop confidence in yourself. Every time you speak and mess up, you're actually making progress. This isn't about getting everything right. It's about reclaiming your courage to try, and with that, you'll build real fluency. So, let me leave you with this. The next time you sit down to study a language, skip the grammar book for now. Talk to someone, ask questions, and throw yourself into those messy, imperfect moments. Because your space, your progress, and your confidence don't come from perfection. They come from speaking, learning, and growing. Number 2. Language immersion in everyday life. No study time, just living. What if I told you that the key to learning a new language isn't found in textbooks or flashcards? Nope, it's not in the structured study time we all feel pressured to stick to. In fact, what if I told you that you could immerse yourself in a language just by living your day-to-day life? Now, I know you're probably thinking, that sounds way too simple to be true. But trust me on this, sometimes the best way to learn is by simply living the language, no extra effort required. You know the type, right? You've seen them before, those people who spend hours in language apps, endlessly memorizing new vocabulary, but still freeze up when it's time to actually have a conversation. We've all been there. We follow the rules, memorize the words, and yet somehow, when we get in the moment, it doesn't feel like the language is flowing naturally. It feels like we're translating every word in our heads before we speak. It's exhausting, frustrating, and honestly, it makes us question if we'll ever really get the hang of it. But here's the twist. What if you stopped studying altogether? What if, instead of trying to memorize everything, you just let the language come to you in real, natural situations? The secret is immersion, the kind that happens naturally without you even realizing it. You see, when you immerse yourself in the language, whether that's changing your phone settings, watching TV shows, listening to music, or chatting with people in your community, you're giving your brain the tools it needs to learn. No classroom, no quizzes, just real-life practice. Let me give you a personal story to illustrate this. A few months ago, I was traveling through Italy, and I decided to stop overthinking my language learning. I had spent so much time on apps and books that when it came to speaking with locals, I was more worried about making mistakes than actually enjoying the conversation. Then one afternoon, I got lost in a small town and had to ask for directions. I had no choice but to jump into the conversation, using whatever Italian I could muster. Sure, I didn't get every word right, but you know what happened? I understood more than I thought I would, and more importantly, I learned by doing, not by memorizing. It was a total game changer for me. The beauty of immersion is that you're not just memorizing words in isolation. You're learning them in context. You're connecting them to real experiences, real people, and real emotions. This is how fluency actually happens. It's about reclaiming your space in a world where the language is already happening around you. Instead of feeling like you have to study or prepare, you're simply living in the language. And that, my friends, is how you actually learn. So the next time you're tempted to sit down with a grammar book or study for an hour, stop. Take a walk in your target language. Listen to the people around you. Engage in a real-world conversation, even if you're not 100% confident. This is about reclaiming your confidence, your curiosity, and your ability to thrive in a language without the crutch of perfectionism. You don't need a textbook to live the language, you just need to live. Your progress, your understanding, and your fluency are all there, waiting for you to step into them. So, go ahead, take the plunge. Change your routine, change your environment, and embrace the natural flow of the language. This is about your space, your confidence, and your growth. All you need to do is live it. Number 3, break free from language apps. Create your own learning method. What if I told you that the best way to learn a language isn't through a fancy app or another endless list of vocabulary? Yes, you heard that right. You can actually break free from language apps and create your own learning method that works for you. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, but the apps are so convenient. They've got everything I need right there, don't they? Yes, they're convenient, but let's be real. Are they actually helping you speak the language with confidence in the real world? Probably not. You know the type, the ones who've been using Duolingo for months, maybe even years, but still freeze when it's time to have a real conversation. They know all the words but can't string them together in a sentence. Sound familiar? We've all been there. We download the apps, we get a streak going, we get a little too comfortable with the right answer button, and then we hit a wall. The problem is, these apps, while helpful for learning some basics, don't teach you how to use the language in real-life situations. They don't prepare you for the messy, beautiful chaos of actual communication. And that's where the magic happens, when you break free from the structure and start creating your own method. So, here's my suggestion. Stop relying solely on language apps. Instead, create a method that fits your actual life. Start by thinking about what you need the language for. Is it to order food when you travel? Is it to have deep conversations with native speakers? Tailor your learning to those real-life scenarios. For example, if you're learning French and you love cooking, try learning cooking-related vocabulary. Watch cooking shows or follow recipes in French. Instead of using an app's pre-made phrases, build your own list of words and phrases that you'll actually use. You're not just memorizing random words. You're learning what's relevant to you, making it way more fun and effective. Let me give you a personal example. When I was learning Spanish, I didn't just stick to what the apps told me. I created a method that worked for me. I watched Spanish YouTube channels about food and travel, two things I love. I started reading recipes in Spanish, jotting down words that came up frequently. I didn't stick to the order a coffee lessons. I thought about how I could actually use the language in my world. I also started chatting with friends who spoke Spanish and didn't shy away from mistakes. In doing so, I found myself learning faster because I was applying the language to something meaningful to me. Here's the truth. Your method doesn't have to look like everyone else's. The apps won't tell you how to truly engage with the language in the messy, real-world situations you care about. You don't need to sit through endless drills. You just need to be present and use the language in a way that works for your life. That's when you'll see progress, when you make the language part of your world, not just something you study. This is about reclaiming your time, your approach, and your success. You get to decide how you learn, where you learn, and what you learn. Don't be afraid to break away from the system. Embrace your own method. Because when you do, you'll realize something powerful. You don't need to conform to someone else's idea of language learning. You're creating your own, and that's a game changer. Number 4. Mistakes are your best friend. Fail forward to fluency. What if I told you that the secret to fluency in a new language isn't about avoiding mistakes? Yes, you heard me right. Embrace your mistakes because they're your best friend in the journey to fluency. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, but isn't making mistakes a bad thing? Doesn't that mean I'm failing? Trust me, I get it. We've all been conditioned to think that making mistakes is something to avoid at all costs. But here's the thing, mistakes are actually your ticket to success. You know the type, the ones who are so afraid of getting something wrong that they freeze up, never actually speaking the language. We've all been there. You're terrified of mispronouncing a word, of messing up grammar, or looking silly. So instead of jumping into the conversation, you stay silent, letting the fear of failure hold you back. The thing is, the only real failure is not speaking at all. If you're not making mistakes, it means you're not trying, and that's the real problem. So, here's the twist. What if I told you that making mistakes is exactly how you move forward? When you mess up, it's an opportunity to learn. Every mistake gives you feedback, showing you what works and what doesn't. This isn't just some motivational mumbo-jumbo, there's real science behind it. The more you fail, the more your brain adapts. Every wrong sentence you make helps your brain solidify the correct patterns. Mistakes are how we grow, how we evolve. It's how we get closer to fluency. Let me tell you about my own experience. A while ago, I was traveling in a country where I didn't speak the language very well. I had been learning for months, but when it came time to order food in a restaurant, I froze. I didn't know the word for vegetarian, and I ended up saying something that was totally incorrect. The waiter looked at me, smiled, and corrected me. Did I feel embarrassed? Absolutely. But you know what happened next? I remembered that correction. I used it the next time I was in a similar situation. And slowly but surely, those mistakes turned into muscle memory. I was failing forward, and that's when things really clicked. Here's the truth. Mistakes are the building blocks of confidence. They give you the courage to try again, and the more you try, the more you improve. So stop holding yourself back out of fear of being perfect. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. It's about reclaiming your confidence, your curiosity, and your freedom to learn without judgment. If you're willing to fail, you're on the right path. At the end of the day, language learning is not a straight line from point A to point B. It's full of curves, detours, and yes, mistakes. And that's okay. In fact, it's better than okay. It's essential. So next time you're about to say something in a new language, don't worry about being perfect. Just speak, fail forward, learn, and know that with every mistake, you're one step closer to fluency. Your mistakes aren't a roadblock. They're the key to your success. Embrace them. Number 5. No translation. Think directly in the target language. Here's a bold idea for you. Stop translating in your head. Yes, you heard me. No translation at all. Now I know what you're thinking, but how else am I supposed to understand the language if I don't translate every word first? Trust me, I get it. We've all been there, struggling to find that perfect translation before we can speak or write. But here's the secret. The more you rely on translation, the longer it takes to actually think in the language. And if you can't think in the language, you're going to keep hitting that mental wall. It's time to break free. You know the type. Those who learn a new language but still need to pause and mentally convert everything into their native tongue before responding. It's exhausting, right? It's like your brain is constantly running a marathon just to keep up. We've all been there, caught in the translation loop. But here's the catch. Every time you translate, you're slowing down your fluency. You're not just learning words, you're building a bridge between two different worlds. But what if you could skip the bridge and just jump straight into the target language? Here's the twist. Thinking directly in the target language is the game changer. Imagine, instead of converting every word or sentence, you just know what to say. You're not thinking in one language and then converting, you're processing everything in the language you're learning. It sounds like magic, right? But it's not. It's just how your brain works when you immerse it fully. Your brain is capable of thinking in a new language, but it needs the right practice and mindset. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first you'll wobble and think, am I doing this right? But once you get the hang of it, you don't even have to think about the mechanics. You just ride. Let me share a quick story. When I first started learning Spanish, I couldn't shake the habit of mentally translating every word I wanted to say. It was exhausting and frustrating. Then one day I decided to stop. I made a conscious effort to think directly in Spanish, even if I didn't know the exact word. Instead of saying, how do I say car in Spanish? I'd just describe it. The thing with wheels that moves fast. It felt clumsy at first, but over time something clicked. I started noticing more words in real conversations. I began to understand without translating first. And before I knew it, my brain was thinking in Spanish, not switching back and forth. This isn't just about convenience, it's about freedom. Freedom from overthinking, freedom from the constant back and forth translation. It's empowering because you're no longer chained to the translation process. You're letting the language flow through you naturally, just like it does when you speak your native tongue. This is about reclaiming your space in the target language, your confidence, and your ability to express yourself without hesitation. The more you practice thinking directly in the target language, the easier it becomes. You stop second-guessing yourself and start feeling the language. every time you push yourself to think in that new language, you're getting closer to fluency. So next time you're faced with a conversation in your new language, skip the translation step. Just dive in, speak, feel, and know that every moment you spend thinking in the target language is a moment that brings you closer to mastering it. Your fluency is waiting, and it's just a thought away. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope this video gave you some fresh, practical insights into how pragmatism can revolutionize the way you approach learning languages. If you found this helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps to get this message out there. And if you're hungry for more content like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, if you know someone who's struggling with language learning or looking for a new approach, share this video with them. Let's spread the word and help others unlock their language potential. I'd love to hear your thoughts or experiences with this topic, so drop a comment below and let's start a conversation. How have you approached learning a new language, and where have you hit roadblocks? Remember, the key to progress isn't in doing what's supposed to work. It's about doing what truly gets you speaking, thinking, and connecting. Keep pushing forward, stay practical, and see how far you can go. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing,